Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. At the end of this month, Lexington Mayor Jim Gray will leave office and return to private life and business. He's called being mayor the best job in the world. Today, a chance to look back with Gray on his 8 years leading Lexington. He's actually been a constant at city government for 12 years, including his time as vice mayor. Gray has overseen Lexington in a time of population growth, the redevelopment of many once blighted areas. He has presented 8 balanced budgets in a row and invested heavily in public safety. Gray has had some frustrations along the way, including shootings likely connected to the nationwide opioid epidemic. There have been some others. Mayor Gray joins us today to look back and to look ahead, and we thank you very much for coming in.
Bill, great to be with you again.
Mayor, my first question is, has it hit you yet that in a few weeks you will be returning to private life and you don't have to answer to 300,000 people?
Well, you know, what I've learned about life, and you have too, Bill, and many of our citizens know this, so many people know this, that, you know, life is about adjusting and adapting and about taking on new challenges. And I believe when one door closes, another door opens, but you got to be looking out for those opportunities. I've always been irrepressibly optimistic, and I see public service as having been a really rewarding experience in my life. I always said that I believe you could take good business practices and principles into government. You could translate a lot from the private sector into government, but I also know that you can translate a lot from government into the private sector and into the pro bono or the charitable sector, philanthropy. There's just so many lessons that you learn in government, and a lot of that has to do with patience, and a lot of it has to do with patience. And a lot of it has to do with persistence, too. I mean, the public, I think, often doesn't understand how quickly government actually moves behind the curtain. Now, a lot of things look like they move very slowly, but behind the curtain, and when things are really getting done, it moves very, very quickly. And everybody has an opinion on it.
Take us behind the curtain just a little bit, if you will, as to your experience in serving in this office. You were a businessman. That's what you had known. But what is it like? And you chose to move your office down to the the lobby, basically, there, right on the first floor.
Even be more exposed, right?
Exactly. And I mean, I take it there would be calls that would come that had to be dealt with instantly, but yet there were things you're trying to do long term. How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, you know, one of the first things that I learned about the putting the office on the first floor, it's very much like a newsroom environment. And when you've got a challenge, when you've got an issue, you need to have all hands on deck. And that's one of the real benefits. And of course, it's very accessible to the public as well. So that's the symbolic message that it sent. But it also was all about being efficient when we had a real challenge to deal with. And when you got a real challenge to deal with, there's no wasting time. You know, you just have to learn that you got to take advantage of every moment when you're dealing with a crisis. And that's what we learned to do. Right out of the gate, we had a fiscal crisis. We had a financial crisis. We were $9 million in the hole the very first month I entered office. It was in the depths of the recession. We had to deal with a $27 million budget deficit in my very first budget. And we had to fix a pension that was upside down. We had to fix a health insurance system for our employees that was upside down, hemorrhaging almost $15 million a year. Well, you had to get your financial house in order, just like in business. You got to get your financial house in order before you're going to get anything else accomplished. That led us, by getting our financial house in order, it led us to making the improvements in quality of life, quality of place that we've been able to make, including the renovations that groundbreaking for Rupp Arena and the new reinvented Rupp Arena and the convention center, the town branch, the historic courthouse that we just opened, projects like that. And I just love the high-speed internet, the high-speed fiber project. We're going to be the largest high-speed fiber, largest gigabit city in the country. So all of those things were a part of getting our financial house in order first.
Lexington was named one of the top best managed cities in the country recently. How did you achieve that? I mean, does it take a lot of prioritization and saying no a lot of times to people who have good ideas?
Well, the first thing you got to do is put a good team in place. And you don't learn that casually. That came from being in business for a long time and going through ups and downs, going through struggles. Our company experienced insolvency after my father passed away, and we had another couple of hard, rough patches. And every time you go through a rough patch, you learn something. And I learned that having a really capable team in place makes all the difference in the world. Now that sounds sort of cliche and corny, and everybody would say that, but getting the right people in place is really tough and really challenging. And it's just as tough in government as it is in business. And I made some mistakes, but you come out of those and you keep moving.
Did you want people around you who would say from time to time, Mayor, you're wrong on this one?
I want that all the time, not just occasionally. You want feedback that's honest, and you want to encourage that kind of feedback. And you got to be, as a leader, you got to be careful about discouraging that kind of feedback, dissenting of points of view. You've got to encourage dissenting points of view, and that's really hard for a lot of. I think that's hard. That's just naturally, instinctively hard for folks. You've got to work on that to encourage. And frankly, I think that's one of the benefits of the press, Bill, because the press is always, if they're doing their job, the press is always pushing back. They're not flattering you. They're pushing back on you, and they're challenging. And that's what you guys have done well. That's what I think we've got a vigorous press in Lexington, and that fourth estate is essential and vital to our democracy.
You have never hidden the fact that you love this job. You love being mayor. I think at one point, you called it the best job in the world. What was the best part of being mayor of Lexington?
Oh, the best part is engaging with so many citizens who care about our city. I've always believed that if people felt better about their city when they get up in the morning, then we will have been doing our job, because they'll feel better about themselves. So going to work, feel better about their city, then we'll be doing our job as elected public servants, or in any capacity in government, whether we're elected or whether we're in the bureaucracy, whether we're employees in our government. If we're helping folks, and if people feel better about their city, and so that's very rewarding to me when I run into people like on Sunday when we had the open house for the historic courthouse square now, and people were coming up to me and they were thanking me. They didn't need to thank me, they almost thanked themselves, because the public kept saying, we need to do this. We don't need to have this historic building in the center of our city. We don't need to have it eroding and decaying and deteriorating. We need to fix it up. And that's just an example. The same thing with Rupp Arena, the same thing with the convention center, same thing with the things that represent the spirit and the place. And in many respects, we've had a renaissance of spirit and place, and I'm proud of that.
You have a lot of projects that are underway that you're having to leave unfinished. The Town Branch Commons, as you say, the Convention Center under construction, Rupp Arena. There's this new proposal now for out where the Stockyards was, maybe some apartments and all of that. Regrets about leaving some of those things undone?
No, not really, because I know that the projects are in good shape. I learned in this job a little bit different than in the construction business. I used to think that the heavy lifting came once the bricks and mortar started, once we broke ground on a project. I've learned in this job that the heavy lifting comes when you're planning the project, when you're bringing people to consensus to get it done, when you're creating the funding mechanisms to get the project done. The simpler part is when we've got the plans all together, and then you're actually building the project. Then you really can fast forward and look forward to the ribbon cutting.
What regrets do you have looking back over 8 years of leading Lexington? Is there something that you would like to have done if circumstances may have been different?
Oh, I really don't look at it that way, Bill. I hope that doesn't sound pretentious or presumptuous, because we had so much on our plate and so much that we wanted to get done. And when I think of the three goals, which was creating good paying jobs for Lexington citizens, our second goal was to run government efficiently, my third goal was to build a great American city, and we're getting all of those done, and I'm very proud of that. And there's only so much bandwidth you got. Now, that's not to say that you don't wish on occasion, oh gee, I wish I'd been able to get this tackled. But I'm very proud that with the bandwidth we had, with the resources we had, that we've gotten so much done.
Lexington Mayor Jim Gray is our guest on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. We'll come back in just a moment. He will soon be succeeded by former Lexington Vice Mayor Linda Gorton. And we'll talk about how that transition is going, what he expects from her, and a lot more on Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back now to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. We are visiting with Lexington Mayor Jim Gray, who will be leaving office after 2 terms coming up at the end of December. You had the option to run for a 3rd term. You made a bid for Congress, which didn't work out. Do you regret that you didn't seek that 3rd term?
You know, there's some days, you know, in full disclosure, there's some days that you think, well, you know, maybe I should have gone on with this. But I've also learned that there's a cycle. There are cycles in life. And when you've done what you think you can do in the job you've got, then you need to move on. And founders did not intend for us to have these jobs forever. And so, you know, I believe strongly that when you've done your best and when it's time then to move on to a new initiative, to a new project, whatever that might be, and contribute, you know, continue contributing. Because as people ask me, well, Jim, are you leaving? I'm like, you couldn't push me out of here with a bulldozer. You know, no, you can contribute and continue to contribute in many ways in life. And that's what I think is remarkable about Lexington, because so many people do contribute in such remarkable ways.
Mayor, what was one of the tough decisions that you had to make that surprised you, something that was not part of your overall strategy or planned out, but something that just may have come out of the blue?
Well, I would say that one of the more challenging decisions was removing and relocating the Confederate statues from the old courthouse lawn. I'd already made a decision on the weekend of Charlottesville that I would call on the city council to make that move of those statues the following Tuesday. But that weekend, when all the conditions erupted in Charlottesville and the tragedy of Charlottesville, I made the decision that I should go ahead and announce that we were going to move and relocate the statues. That was challenging. We were on the radar of the white nationalists. We were the next city that was targeted. So we were on the razor's edge. But I said then, and I'll say it today, that there's no perfect time to do the right thing. It's all the time. You got to do the right thing all the time. That was the right decision. These statues were located on the very space, the very place where men, women, and children were sold into slavery. And it just was not right to honor these men who fought to preserve slavery on that very ground. Now, they have been removed and relocated to the Lexington Cemetery, and I really I'll never be able to thank the members of the board of Lexington Cemetery enough for helping us with that move. But it was the right thing to do, and it was a challenging period. We had news from all over the world here for us for a few days,
including in the weeks after, because of the potential for more, as you said, issues.
But it was, but you know, when I think about a decision. That decision especially, it was, in many respects, it was symbolic, but today you have to be deliberate about going to see those statues. There were many members of our community, those of color, who had to walk by those symbols every single day, symbols of a period in time where their ancestors, their forebears, were enslaved and were sold in slavery at that very location. So it was the right thing to do, Bill.
Mayor, how is now that you're leaving office, how is the transition going to Mayor-elect Linda Gorton, whom you ended up endorsing late in the campaign?
Yeah. Well, I think it's going very well. Linda supports a lot of the projects that we've initiated, And I feel very good about her ability, her leadership, her background, her experience. She served on the council for 16 years, so she understands that dynamic. She understands that, it doesn't go your way every day as mayor. You've got to be patient, and yet you also got to be persistent. And my encouragement to anybody in public service is to think big, to start small, and to move swiftly. We've got a lot of things, a lot of challenges, a lot of problems that got to be solved. They're there every single day, and you've just really got to be relentless about it. You got to wake up in the morning saying, we got these problems we got to work on. We got to bring people together to solve them.
What can you tell people in Lexington about the mayor-elect that they may not know? A lot of folks know that she emphasizes collaborative decisions, yet she says she can make a decision quickly if needed. She won in all parts of the city, really, in her campaign.
Right.
And yet she will say herself she's surprised at how she gets so many votes.
Well, Linda is a person who just comes up to you and naturally you like her. She's very engaging, and she's very detail oriented. She's a nurse by profession, and you know that she's going to cover the details, and that's really important because, and she takes public service seriously, and all of those are attributes in a role like this.
You mentioned earlier the pensions were something that you jumped on here in Lexington and got in order, whereas the state has had its issues in trying to deal with with the larger pension issues. Advice to them?
Well, what we did was, first off, I knew that it wasn't going to be an overnight solution, and I knew that we had to bring people together. We had to work collaboratively. We had to bring people together, get their points of view, and we had to keep working on it. We couldn't shove anything down anybody's throat. It just doesn't work that way in government. I think by my experience working with professionals in business helped me a lot, because in government, you got a lot of professionals you're dealing with, and they're going to have a point of view. And when you're trying to solve something as some would say as intractable as a pension problem like we've got in the state is, then it requires a lot of persistence. It requires a lot of collaboration. It requires people engaging, and you've got to have leadership as well. We had some excellent consultants on our team who continued to come back with the data, and the data helped us form the solutions. It was hard to ignore the facts, but you can't shove it down people's throats. You've got to insist that, we're going to keep working on this. So one thing I did say was, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting on this problem. We are not going to leave this work table. We are going to continue to meet until we resolve this problem. And everyone then, I think at the end of the day, Bill, everyone realized that part of compromise is giving up something, is giving up a little bit, and everyone contributed. The city contributed substantially by adding $10 million a year to support and to fund the pension.
Let's talk just a minute about the relationship between Frankfort and the local governments, which is an interesting balance at times. The state laws restrict the sources of revenues that cities can have based on size. Lexington cannot have a restaurant tax, as an example, but the smaller cities can. Lexington is very heavily reliant on the occupational tax, and you have some concerns there, I know, that if you lose a large employer, the train announcement recently, that can throw things off. Frankfort lawmakers do not allow local governments to make gun rules. So some decisions are passed off to the local governments, and yet Frankfort holds some of the decisions there.
Yeah, that can be really frustrating. I have to confess, when I came into this job, I didn't realize how many constraints, how many restrictions there were in terms of local governance and local authority. There's a lot of talk that we want to give authority, more local authority. And when it comes down to it, though, legislature doesn't want to do that. And that is frustrating. I'll acknowledge that right out of the gate. For example, we had to get the state legislature to approve our pension reform. We couldn't do it on our own. So not only do we have to work together with our fire and police unions and with all the constituencies that were involved in that decision, but we also had to get an agreement that would pass muster with the legislature. Now, when you're thinking rationally, you think it just shouldn't be this way. We should have more local authority. And I would always advocate for more local authority.
We're with Lexington Mayor Jim Gray, his final weeks of serving in this capacity. We're going to find out more about what he has planned after he leaves office. That and more, and the Christmas holiday events coming up in Lexington in these days before he leaves office. Coming up on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. Our remaining moments here with Lexington Mayor Jim Gray, who is leaving office at the end of the month. Let me say to you, we appreciate the access we've had to you and the many times that you have appeared here, and sometimes under strange circumstances. I remember at least 2 or 3 times that you came in a snowstorm
yes.
and came on with us.
Yes,
and
yes.
Those are always challenging, aren't they?
They are, because people expect the roads to be cleared before the snow even hits the ground.
Right. And
they don't want to hit folks don't expect that the snow will actually hit the pavement. It should be removed before it hits the pavement.
About 12 feet up, maybe.
That's what I've learned. That's what the expectation is.
I guess I will ask, are you leaving the city ready for the winter to come? We've already had some cold weather.
Oh yeah, we've got plenty of salt. We've got plenty of resources ready.
What are your plans going forward? I know you obviously Gray Construction, your family business. Do you
Right.
you plan to return there? Or?
Well, fortunately, I worked hard with my brothers to put together a succession plan, and things are going well at our business. I'm still the chairman of the board of the company, and I would like to contribute and help to contribute where I can. I have other interests, of course, from having been in the role like I've had here, and I expect to continue to work in charitable initiatives. I want to help Ann Bacus with what she's doing with the Town Branch Park. That's a project that's close to my heart, and projects like that will emerge over time. The university has a big footprint, of course, in the city, and anything we can do to help the university is something that I think is really essential, because for our city to grow and prosper, it means working together closely with the university all the time.
Somebody described an event the other day, I think it was honoring Fred Mills downtown,
Yeah.
and they said that as you walked through, you shook every hand, and somebody asked the question, well, what are you running for? And you were pretty definitive about that. Are you through with public office?
Oh, Bill, politics is a function of pacing and timing, and I won't say that I'm absolutely through with it, but I have learned that what the founders, they didn't intend for us to hold these jobs forever. They intended for others to come along and to contribute and do their best in those roles. And I learned the same thing in business. If you try to hold on to a job forever, then you're only going to hurt and compromise the institution that you're supposed to be serving. So it's real important that you create a framework for succession, and that you encourage those who do come into whatever that role is that you may have held, that you encourage them. So I expect to do just that. Don't know exactly what every day is going to look like, but I'm very optimistic about and very excited about what tomorrow will bring.
Well, the rumor swirled around about a statewide run next year, like maybe for state auditor. That came up as you.
I have heard these rumors. I heard
you
these
didn't
rumors.
start them,
I
huh?
heard these rumors in Louisville, believe it or not.
Right.
Not in Lexington.
But so we'll wait and see where all that goes as far as whether you re-enter politics. Christmas and major events coming up. The parade. It looks like we could potentially have some snow out there at that time. That always sets the mood.
It does. It does. The Christmas parade is always a lot of fun. What's exciting is we did the Christmas tree lighting last Saturday night, and there were thousands of people for the lighting of the Christmas tree, and inviting and welcoming Santa Claus to town. This was the 8th time I got to do that, and that was real exciting. And you know, as we enter the holidays, I think it's just such a time for us to reflect on Thanksgiving. It's such a good time for us to reflect on all the blessings that we've had, and that's exactly how I feel about it.
About a minute left as you leave office. What would you like to say to the people of Lexington and beyond? You know, Lexington is kind of the star city for our viewing area. You know, people are proud to be neighbors to this community who don't even live here, but it's a large city in itself.
Yeah, I would say that I would thank the people of Lexington, of Fayette County, friends of mine throughout the district for the opportunity that I've had to engage in public service, to actually work in this job, because it's been so rewarding. It's been such a learning experience. Even the times that were tense and even the really challenging conditions and situations, you know, I reflect back on them and I realize how much I learned, and I realize what a rare opportunity it is to have that chance. And for that, I am just enormously thankful. And so that's what I would say. And Lexington is really a great city because it's got some really wonderful people here. We have many blessings.
Mayor Jim Gray, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. We'll see you bright and early this week on WKYT This Morning, and we hope you make it a good week ahead.